8-channel battery analyzer EQ-BST8-10. We're gonna go ahead and do a simple setup and basic software operation demonstration. First thing here is I want to show that there is a single cell rack that comes with the system, and just show a quick hookup. As you can see, we already have one channel that's properly hooked up and ready to use. The rack here basically hooks up the same way. You have two larger gauge wires, which is for the large current, because this is a 30 volt 10 amp per channel unit. This plug here is for voltage information, which all you gotta do is just plug in, you screw tight. The large wires, you actually have to remove the screws and then install. But we're not gonna use the single cell rack, so I'm gonna go ahead and just take that off. Like I mentioned, the one's already set up. I want to show you here the battery testing clamp. It's a similar setup, like I said, two large cables and a plug. And here's the alligator clips. Normally what you want to do is go ahead and hook up the voltage sensor onto the main clamps, because you're going to have to somehow hook that up to the battery anyway, and this works just fine. The pre-set up unit that we're going to use for demo here, it's a 25.9 volt 10 amp hour battery. We use electrical tape to cover up all the openings because you don't want the clamps to touch each other. That's safety precaution. After you hook up the front, you want to go ahead and install the RS-232 plug into the RS-232 to USB adapter that comes with the system here. It's pretty simple, plug and play. Of course, there's a large AC cable that you have to go ahead and set up and plug in before you could start using the unit. There's only two ports in the back, the AC input and the RS-232. After you get the unit all set up, you want to go ahead and turn on your computer. First of all, the laptop we're using are just for demonstration purpose. Your laptop that comes with the system might be slightly different, depends on what's available at the time when you purchase the system. After everything's hooked up, just go ahead and hit the power button. Then you should have the TC53 icon here. Just double click on that, open it up. It should look like this. Over here you have the COM, which depends on your computer, normally should be COM 1. And right under it you have number 1, which we only have one of these battery analyzers hooked up, which if you have multiple machines, you'll see multiple indicators, your icons here. Over here you have channels 1 through 8, which is the represents the 8 channel on the battery analyzer. And like I mentioned, we only have one hookup, so we're gonna go ahead and just show you the one. You right click on the first channel, hit the start up selection, and then you'll see multiple steps. This is just a basic step that we want to show you on a basic standard battery testing. Step 1, you can see here, it is charge current, constant current charge. You can also select constant voltage, constant current discharge, constant power discharge, resistance, and various options. But like I mentioned, this is a basic setup parameter to test a basic setup of charging and then discharging. But anyways, let me explain these cycles. Number 1, we have the constant current charge And the parameters here are voltage. You set up the maximum voltage for that particular battery that you want to go ahead and test. We are using a 25.6 volt, 25.9 volt lithium-ion battery, which have the maximum voltage of 29.4 volts. So you want to make sure you set it up properly, so that way you don't overcharge the battery and the battery's protection kicks in, or worse, if you don't have proper protection on the battery, it might ruin the battery. Next parameter here is current, which means charge current, since the step 1 is for constant current charge. Right now it's set at 5,000 milliamp, which if you want to change that, or depends on the specifications of your battery, it's up to you. I mean, right now on our battery we set up at 5,000 milliamp, which is 5 amps of charging current. Second step here is constant voltage, which is basically trickle charge, where after the battery get charged up close to 100% full, the current will drop, and the constant voltage, like it says, I mean, the voltage will stay at 25.4 volt, where the current will fluctuate, depends on the state of the battery. Parameters here are the same. Voltage was set at the maximum of 29.4 volt, and the current here has changed to 50. We input the parameter of 50 milliamps. Basically means that when the battery reaches 50 milliamps, the machine will cease to, well, it's not the machine will cease, that particular step will cease, which means the battery is fully charged at that time. Step number 3, you'll see it says rest, which means that it will rest. Well, rest meaning that it will pause for a period of preset amount of time. Right now it's set at 3 minutes. You can change that parameter to whatever you want. You could have rest for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is. And then it's gonna move on to step number 4, which is a constant current discharge. Right now, same way, is set up at 2,000 mAh, which is 2 amps of discharge. Voltage cutoff, it's 17.5, which means this is a 7-cell battery. Each cell should equal to about 2.5 volt, which is the minimum recommended voltage for this particular cell or battery. And then also, well, this is number 5, is rest again, so to let the battery stop and cool down for a minute before we continue more testing, which in this case we have the cycle parameter. Basically just tells you or allows you to set up the machine or this particular testing for whatever amount of cycles you prefer to do on this particular battery cell or batch of batteries or cells. Right now, if you look over here, there's 2 parameters you got to set up for this particular command to work. Jump to 1. This means that after it reaches step number 6, it's gonna jump back into one of these above steps, 1 through 5, which we want the batteries to go ahead and charge again, and then rest, and then discharge. So that's why you'll see 1 here. You know, if you have some other steps that you include in here, you could jump to that particular step. And next here you have the 3, which means it will do this 3 times, and then it will just stop completely. Of course, the last step here on whatever setup or whatever parameters, whatever instructions you give the machine, it has to be stop. The last step is always stop. You cannot change that. Hopefully that explains the basic concept of this. Also, on the drop-down menu, I want to point out a couple of things. There's also constant power discharge you could do with this, which means you input a particular watt. Let's say you want to do a 10 watt or 100 watt discharge, you could do that. And you can find more information about that in the PDF manual. and also resistance. All of these are explained within the manual. Then we'll come down here. Here it says from a number and then it says start. This just basically allows you to choose the different steps the program will start as soon as you hit the OK button, which we have 7 steps, so you can choose anything, you know, between those 7 steps. Of course, typically you're going to start with step number 1. After that, you're going to have the record condition, which means right now time is selected and it says 1 second. This just tells the machine how many seconds for it to take a sample of the condition for record. What I meant by condition is just the status of the current process. Either it's charging, discharging, trigger charging, whatever it is. You can also set the other parameters, which is like current, voltage. Next to this box, you have protection parameter. You have basically high low voltage protection for a particular cell or battery that you're testing. If you have a 4.2 volt single cell you're testing, you could change the high voltage protection to, for example, 4.25. In case it reaches that, then it will just stop. If you have a battery with internal protection, you might not necessarily need this extra parameter set up here, offered by the machine and software. Here, base information, just information for you to basically input, like creator, who's working on the system, so you can identify what this particular, if you want to save this parameter, for later use, what this particular parameter is used for, battery, cell, or whatever fits your need. And then that's pretty much it. If you have additional questions with the software, like I mentioned, you can go ahead and refer to the software manual. And for now, we're gonna go ahead and just hit OK. And if you look at here, the numbers start flashing. The arrow down here, which means the battery is being charged. If it's being discharged, you have the arrow up and the color will be in red. Here's the voltage of the battery currently, which is 29.064 right now, and it's gonna go up because we're charging it. The second line here shows the current going into the battery. Right now it's right about 5 amps of current going in, and the last line here is the capacity. It basically shows how much capacity is being fed into the battery.